Hello and welcome to Mr. C History. Now behind me of course is the world famous Liver building with the liver birds on top. I'm of course in Liverpool, one of the most important historical cities in the entire world. Why do I think this? Well, the whole world has come through Liverpool, through its trade links to the sea and its significance to the British Empire. It just started off as a small fishing village in the early 1800s and then it massively exploded because of the River Mersey and its access to the sea and, as I say, its significance in the British Empire. So I'm going to have a look around now. Let's find some of the more hidden sites maybe, look also at some of the significant sites of Liverpool and have a good look around. Well, a good place to start is here, the Albert Dock, or as it's known now, the Royal Albert Dock. And these were built in the 1840s, and interestingly, they were the first docks and warehouse systems to be built without any wood, so they're very safe and very reliable. And this was at the time when Liverpool was exploding in part of the Industrial Revolution. Why? Because it was transporting all the goods to and, crucially, from the British Empire, from ivory to wood to interesting food, to salt, to coal, to all sorts of things. It would have gone through the Liverpudlian dock system, which the Albert Dock here, right in the centre of Liverpool, is a key component. Now, for many, many years, this was left derelict, really, but they spruced it up, and now it's got the Tate and restaurants. But of course, one of the other key things is slaves and slavery. Now, not many slaves are actually traded through this area because the transatlantic slave triangle took goods from Liverpool down to Africa where it was traded for slaves. Then the Middle Passage took the slaves from Africa to America. So it wasn't really a place to take slaves, but crucially, the boats that were in the slave trade were all registered here in Liverpool. Overall, it's estimated that 1.5 million slaves went on boats that were registered from Liverpool. So Liverpool has a long, long legacy and history of slavery. There is no national slavery monument in Britain yet, perhaps and probably there should be. And if there was, it probably should be here in Liverpool. The only other thing to say is that, as you know, I love my World Heritage Sites, and this is the location of a World Heritage Site that's been struck off the list. Liverpool Mercantile City was on the World Heritage Site list for about 20 years. It's been taken off because of redevelopment, building of the Everton Stadium further up. So we are no longer at a World Heritage Site. I mentioned there's no memorial to the slavery and slave trade here in Liverpool, but there are some extraordinary remnants. And here at the Martin's Bank building, we have a relief of what looks to be, and it seems to be, enslaved children. There's some on the other side as well. There with the tools of the trade. It's got, I think, that looks like an anchor potentially, and some of the produce, the sort of things that they were developing on. Not sure what that sort of figure up those there. But this is just an extraordinary symbol, isn't it, of a city built on slavery. Behind me is Liverpool City Hall, and on the 9th of November 1865, something very significant took place here, the last act of the US Civil War. Yes, you might think that the US Civil War ended in the April of that year, 1865, but no, it continues sort of on. The last act was here in November. Very quickly, what was the US Civil War? Well, 11 states in the south, the southern states of the United States, decided to break away from the Union, and they called themselves the Confederacy. There's lots of reasons why, but the main reason is they wanted to continue on with the institution of slavery. I'll talk more about Liverpool's connection with the Confederacy in a moment. But there was a boat called the CSS Shenandoah, and it was fighting around sort of Alaska region, and the war was over. It didn't know. Communication wasn't great, and they sort of carried on down the coast to California, Mexico. Eventually, they were told by another boat, oh, by the way, guys, the Confederacy doesn't really exist anymore. You lost the war. Now, the captain, a man called Waddell, he didn't know quite what to do. Should he surrender himself to the mercy of a Union court? He thought, no, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go all the way to Liverpool. And this was before the Panama Canal was built, so he had to go all the way down the Cape Horn in South America, up through the Atlantic again, eventually getting here to Liverpool. So no wonder it wasn't until the November. And he decided to surrender. And so he got off the boat, off the Mersey, came to the mayor of Liverpool and said, I surrender. We are no longer fighting for the Confederacy. And that is the last act of the Confederacy of the US Civil War. And it takes place here in Liverpool. This is Rumford Place, and in the 1860s this was a hotbed of Confederacy and Union spying in the US Civil War, and indeed just up there is a plaque to the CSS Shenandoah. Interestingly, it's a plaque to all the Navy sailors who served with the Confederacy. It also has on it an early Confederate flag here in Liverpool on a plaque. Rather interesting, rather extraordinary, I think, there. But why? Why is Liverpool so synonymous with this? And why is there was a lot of support for the Confederacy in Liverpool? Well, the answer is cotton, of course. Raw cotton in the 1850s and 1860s was the principal trade of Liverpool. They would transport the cotton that would come here on boats, and it would go to the cotton mills of Lancashire, and it would be developed to the clothing the world. Where did that cotton come from, though? The southern United States of America. And in the start of the Civil War, of course, the Union, Abraham Lincoln and the Union, they blockaded those southern ports, stopping that cotton from coming out. So there was huge job losses here in Liverpool. It was a cotton famine. So there was a lot of sympathy for the Confederacy and a lot of sympathy for slavery, because obviously that cotton came from slave labour. It kept it cheap. It gave them their jobs. So much so that the reason why that plaque is there is that it was the US Confederacy's embassy here in Liverpool dealing with also, and also just down the way there was the Union spy chief. He would have been here keeping tabs on it all as well. So Liverpool was a hotbed during the US Civil War. Indeed, it was called the International City of the Confederacy. Interesting times, interesting place. But that is not the only connection to the US Civil War. In a rather nondescript sort of residential part of Liverpool, this is rather extraordinary statue, the Pieta, the Virgin Mary with Jesus. This was originally in a church called the Holy Cross. Now, why I've come here, this church unfortunately was destroyed and demolished in 2004. The reason why I came here is that just after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, a man called John Surratt managed to escape Washington. He got to Montreal. He then got on a boat to Liverpool, and he went to hiding, and he was hiding in the Church of the Holy Cross, which doesn't exist anymore. This is all that's left. What was he? Who was he? He was a Confederate spy who had plotted to kidnap Abraham Lincoln. Obviously, John Wilkes Booth then goes and assassinates President Lincoln. John Surratt, I don't know, he wasn't necessarily too implicated, but he was definitely a man who was on the run, and the authorities certainly wanted to speak to him. He was a suspect in all of this, but he came here to Liverpool to hide. Another Confederate connection. The only other interesting thing about this church, it's called the Holy Cross. The reason why it's called the Holy Cross, it's meant to be the mark, the cross, where St. Patrick put a cross. He preached for the last time in England before he went off to Ireland across the Irish Sea as well. So a rather significant church, sadly demolished. This is the magnificent Rodney Street, and here specifically at number 62 is the birthplace of William Ewart Gladstone, one of the most significant prime ministers ever. Indeed, he was prime minister 4 times during the Victorian period, and Chancellor of the Exchequer also 12 years as prime minister, 12 years as Chancellor of the Exchequer. He first became an MP in 1832, and then he was prime minister until his 80s. 84 he stopped being prime minister, and take note, Joe Biden, into the 1890s. So this majestic sweep across the Victorian times. And what did he do? Well, he pushed through many things for the working classes. Indeed, he was called the People's William. And of course, he presided over the huge expansion of the British Empire. Think of that what you will, but also the railways and pushing into the north of England, places like Liverpool as well. His reputation's tarnished a little bit because his father was a slave trader and slave owner, and Gladstone, you could argue, was ambivalent to it. A bit of a personal failure for Gladstone, though, was Ireland. Ireland was dominated his time, and he was pushing for home rule for Ireland, and he failed to achieve it. It eventually comes, but after his death. This is the Philharmonic dining rooms, and in there, the only Grade 1 listed, architecturally outstanding pub toilets in Britain. After London, Liverpool was the most bombed city during the Blitz of 1940-41. 4,000 Liverpudlians died in the attacks from Nazi Germany, because Hitler knew that to attack and to bomb, to destroy Liverpool and the docks would be a huge blow to the British Empire. And there is a lasting symbol of that here at the parish church of St. Luke's, which is a bombed out church. It is known locally, rather originally, as the bombed out church. And it's a lovely remnant now to it all. I think you can go inside occasionally. They've got it closed at the moment for some sort of festival, but it's quite calm, nice little, you can see the trees growing in it now. Liverpool was hugely impacted by the Second World War, and what's worse is that it didn't want to be seen as a propaganda victory, so Winston Churchill and the government at the time, they kept much of the damage about the news about the damage of Liverpool secret, and the people of Liverpool really were very angry about that. Church isn't the only place where there's some obvious Blitz damage. Here at the Titanic Memorial in Liverpool, there's a bit of on the damage on the arms, and there's a bit on this statue as well. It's right by the coast here, right by the Liver building as well. Bombs dropping everywhere in Liverpool. This is Crosby Beach, just to the north of Liverpool. And if you walk along here, you think, oh, this is just a normal sort of pebble stone British beach. But actually then if you look more closely at the pebbles themselves, you'll see they're quite uniform in shape and quite brick-like, because they are bricks. Why? These are the remnants of the Liverpool Blitz. Now, the Liverpool Blitz killed 4,000 people. It made 70,000 people homeless, and the bombing was indiscriminate. Churches, civic buildings, houses, etc. Now, in the rush to clean up the city and rebuild, they simply gathered up all of the rubble and they dumped it here on Crosby Beach. And it goes miles and miles and miles into that distance there. And it is bricks. It's amazing. If you come and have a look, I mean, there's something rather interesting here. I don't know, this is clearly not a natural form, is it, in some way? But what's that, part of a chimney sort of top or something like that? You know, and you look at the bricks, these are quite clearly not natural sort of things, are they? They are smoothed by the weathering, as it were. And there's everything with sort of various different sort of ructions. And over there by the shoreline, I'll go have a look now, there's a sort of huge civic building kind of building blocks. There's an entire wall here, and you can still see the mortar in the bricks. I mean, I wonder how long this will be here. It's been here 70, 80 years. Going to carry on. It's extraordinary. I mean, I'm not sure I can go all the way to the end, but an amazing remnants, real history here of Liverpool Blitz. This is the magnificence of Liverpool Cathedral, and I just can't compete over the bells. The world's biggest peal of bells. Still going. Finally, a break in the bells there. This is the magnificent Liverpool Cathedral. Now, this thing's full of superlatives. The 5th biggest cathedral in the world, the biggest cathedral in Britain. Got the biggest bells in the world, as we've seen. It is also the longest cathedral in the world, and it's the tallest church in the world with no spire, with that central tower. It is magnificent. Everything about it is size, from that amazing front entrance as you go in, to the huge nave, to the unbelievably high ceilings, to the massive, massive stained glass windows. It is magnificent, brilliant. This wonderful bit of red brick, wall of red brick flying over all of that. Now, it's designed by our old friend Sir Giles Gilbert Scott, the man who designed the Riverside Power Station, what is now Take Britain, and Battersea Power Station from our Chimneys video. But this must have been a real labour of love for him, because this took so long to build. The foundation stone was laid in 1904, and it wasn't finished until 1978. It took 74 years to build. Again, a testament of its size. Now, Scott is actually buried there. He's got a rather naff, sort of forgettable grave actually right at the front, but he's got a much, much nicer sort of memorial in the middle, really. And he was tied, there was an older architect he had to work with first, and he was tied to a rather traditional two-towered sort of thing at first, and then the other architect died, so he was given free rein. He was only 22 when he had this job, actually, in 1904, so amazing. Sadly, he died in the 1960s before he could see it come about, but my goodness me, it is amazing. It's also got an interesting history of the World War II. It also has blitz damage, like we've seen so far, and what's amazing, it had blitz damage before it even finished. Must be one of the only buildings in the world really with something like that. But because it was so big, it was such a target, again, for Adolf Hitler to do it. Now it's interesting that Liverpool is a very pious, very religious city. There is of course the famous Catholic, the Pope's Wigwam, the Catholic Cathedral as well. This is the Anglican, but before 1904 Liverpool didn't really have a cathedral. It had a little small church that it could do things with, but it needed one, and my goodness me, it has got one now. It is a magnificent place, and they have concerts there. There's an art thing going on at the moment. They've had memorials for Hillsborough there. They've had major huge events. This is really could be seen as the heart of Liverpool, and what a magnificent building it is. Well, there you have it, Liverpool, extraordinarily significant, and I managed to do that whole trip round Liverpool without mentioning the famous fabulous four. Ah.